Hey, everybody, welcome to Green Rush. We're here this Friday. I'm doing the kickoff.
I was waiting I'm totally confused because it's Friday. I don't know what computer's running this show. I don't know who's running this show. I just know we're doing a show. I'm
We're
Jimmy
doing it.
Young. Who are you?
I'm David Rabinovitz. Apparently, run at the beginning of the show this week, and we are joined with one of our favorite guests, Morgan Fox of the NCIA.
Hello again, guys.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really well.
Good. Is everything under control in Washington, D.C.? Because it's been normally quiet this week. Am I wrong?
I mean, when is it ever?
Right.
But in terms of cannabis, I think that we're kind of stuck in a wait and see pattern. Both waiting on the reintroduction of the Schumer bill or the introduction of the Schumer bill in the Senate, which all the sponsors keep saying will happen, quote, very soon, which has been stretching on and on and on. Everybody's waiting with bated breath. We are looking at the reintroduction of the MORE Act in the House early next week. So that's really exciting. And, we can't wait to see what the actual language of that bill is. We think that there will be some changes from the version that the House passed in December. The only changes that we know of really for certain are that an amendment that would have allowed federal regulators and license authorities to basically deny federal business licenses to people who had had state level felonies of any sort will be removed, which is excellent because that really flies in the face of the purported social justice bent of this particular bill. But also, we're hearing that there might be a change to the provision related to Small Business Administration loans that will actually expand the scope from what was passed by the House last year to basically mean that people who have been most impacted by the war on drugs, as well as women and people of color, will have a special consideration for SBA loans for any type of business they want to open, not just cannabis businesses.
Oh, that's good news. I think anything that they could do to actually infuse interest loaning from banks is a good thing in any business. So let me ask you a question: how this works? The MORE Act exists. You talk about amendments to that act and I believe it was then Senator Kamala Harris who was involved with the MORE Act, wasn't she?
The lead sponsor taking over the office of the vice presidency.
There you go. So chances are she might actually get a little involved with this, or because she's vice president, they don't get her involved unless there is a 50-50 split in the Senate and she has to come in and make the deciding vote.
Well, in terms of being a tiebreaker in the Senate, she'll absolutely be involved. But behind the scenes, I'm pretty confident that she's going to be nudging Biden to at least not obstruct any of the descheduling legislation that might come across his desk, as well as incremental legislation if that happens to pass through Congress before a larger and more comprehensive bill. But there are going to be really interesting politics in play. That the MORE Act is going to be a real easy lift in, but I don't know if it was to move immediately. And I think that the House is going to wait until they can see what Chuck Schumer's bill looks like in the Senate, can really get a better feel for sort of negotiations they're going to have to do both with the House as well as the Senate once, fingers crossed, both chambers pass these scheduling bills. But either way, the votes are clearly there. I mean, they were there last December, and I think that we're only getting more Republican support this year. Weird partisan politics aside, depending on how like McCarthy and McConnell crack the whip. But really, I think that we're in a really good position now to be able to debate some of the details about what a good descheduling and regulation bill looks like. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, nobody has really seen what or at least among the activist community, has really seen what the new and improved MORE Act is going to look like beyond what we saw passed already and beyond what we've heard about those two items that I mentioned earlier. There could be more. We're really hoping to see a robust regulatory structure included in the new improved well, and I think we're going to have to wait until Tuesday to find out whether or not that's the case. And if no regulatory structure, we're going to be pushing for one very strongly, as well as trying to push for continuation or improvement upon any of the restorative justice provisions that exist in that bill.
Right. When you talk about amendments and regulatory, are we going to see a real workforce development program? In other words, something that is in this law that not only gives those who've been most impacted by the war on drugs an opportunity to get into business, but also learn the business and to actually learn how to run a business. And that's something I know David is very active in.
I'd love to see it. I tend to think that those sort of things will be dealt with at the state level much more than the federal level. I would love to see funding provided at the federal level for such programs at the state level. Similarly, with expungement, the vast majority of arrests and prosecutions and convictions for cannabis take place at the state level. It's a non-zero and not insignificant amount of people that are facing or have been convicted of federal charges. But it pales in comparison to the state level. So even though we might be talking about expunging federal charges and working on some sort of federal programs in terms of public education and job training and things like that, what I would like to see is money specifically set to filter down into the state programs, particularly when it comes to it, because some states have been able to just green light this and move forward with expungements. Illinois has been a great example of that, and some districts in California. Other states are either dragging their feet or they really have the resources to be able to just do it for free for everybody. And I know personally, in states like Ohio, it can cost thousands of dollars to get your records expunged, and that's not something that a lot of people can do. So to fund those sort of efforts at the federal level, but providing funds to trickle down to the state level would be really, really useful. We'll see exactly what that looks like, hopefully next week.
And when you say no one amongst the lobbyists and the activists actually have a chance to see the final draft of these things, who do they share it with internally, or is it really well kept secret amongst the elected officials, as they say?
Well, I mean, at least, and I'm not in these meetings on a day-to-day basis. That's more of our government relations team. But from what I understand from being on the Hill for closing in on 15 years now, that lawmakers and their offices will reach out to stakeholders a lot for input, and very rarely will they share what they're doing with that input. It does happen. But quite often what you get is sort of a very one-way street right up until the actual language is finalized, and then it starts to become a little bit more two-way.
So there's hope on the horizon as we enter the weekend, and then next weekend, and America's opening up now a little bit. People are double vaccinated. I think something like 60% of Americans right now, which is certainly trending in the right direction. Getting back to business as usual in Washington, D.C., is this a good thing for the is this a good thing for the cannabis advocacy movement? Because really and truly, that's what most people want to know. It's like, when is cannabis going to be legalized in this country, or at least decriminalized? That's what that's the number one trending question in the SEO world, by the way.
Well, I mean, to be completely honest, I think it's impossible to really predict exactly what's going to happen. I mean, outside of cannabis, there are numerous important world issues and domestic issues happening that Congress and the administration have to deal with. And as we've discussed, the show that support for cannabis policy reform is very broad but pretty shallow. It usually does not rise to a high priority level for a lot of people, even though, especially if you're looking at criminal justice reforms, it's not necessarily something that is going to have massive impact compared to things like sentencing reform or getting rid of mandatory minimums. But it is sort of a cornerstone of our failed criminal justice system that is going to have to be addressed, and it's one that can be fairly easily addressed. Really, the question is how it gets prioritized by Congress. What I'm seeing right now is sort of picking up where we left off in 2020 in terms of momentum. We started out the beginning of 2020 seeing pretty big hearings about cannabis policy reform in January. And then, we started seeing more movement for bills, and then the pandemic hit. So we didn't really see any progress on cannabis bills until December. Well past the election, past a lot of politically sensitive times and politically sensitive issues. So now in 2021, that pace is starting to pick back up again, and I expect that to continue. But again, a lot of things can happen, and cannabis isn't the only issue that Congress is dealing with.
Absolutely not. David, you got a question for Mr. Bergen here?
Well, not just yet, Jimmy, because my question, I'm going to ask him if he has any thoughts on this whole Delta 8 controversy.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know how much controversial it is. A lot of states are banning Delta 8 THC.
Right.
Well, I think that bans are probably the wrong way to go. I mean, we've seen that prohibition doesn't work. However, there's really not too much research at all about what the substance does. It's only found in very, very minuscule amounts in the plant naturally. And this is really the first time in human history that it's been synthesized from existing cannabinoids and consumed by humans in greater concentrations and larger amounts. So we really don't exactly know what it does to people, short term, long term. A lot of the anecdotal evidence suggests that at least the inebriating or psychoactive effects are similar to Delta 9 THC, but without some of the paranoia. I don't really know what it does to the human body really at all. When you add that to the fact that I've talked to a lot of people who have been testing Delta 8 samples from around the country, and almost all of them come up with massive amounts of impurities and unknown concentrations of substances. It really presents a lot of really sticky issues. Plus, add that to the fact that it's not regulated at all. So, I mean, somebody could be in a basement laboratory and selling on the internet to people that are under the age of 18. It presents a lot of problematic things that could, not only harm consumers, but also could set the movement to legalize cannabis back by years if there turn out to be negative health impacts. So our position is that Delta 8 should be regulated the same way that Delta 9 is under various state laws, as well as under federal law, such as the Farm Bill, until we know more about it. And, that is probably problematic for a lot of businesses that, have been unable to sell their massive stockpiles of CBD because the FDA has been unwilling to actually get off their butts and regulate the substance, and are realizing that they can convert CBD into Delta 8 and be able to actually salvage some of their crop produce. It's very problematic, and it's very tight line to walk. But the bottom line is you really have to look out for consumer safety, and we just don't know enough about this at all. But once again, this comes down to problems associated with prohibition. Right. The fact that the FDA has not been able to effectively regulate CBD yet, especially in terms of food additives and things like that, means that people are sitting on stockpiles and they don't know what to do with it. The fact that the vast majority of states in this country still do not regulate or have legal access to Delta 9 THC means that people in states like Texas or Indiana or Idaho who don't have legal access to Delta 9 THC products are looking for a supposedly legal and readily available alternative. Unfortunately, it's one that people don't know a whole lot about. And this sort of is the same sort of thing that we with like spice and K2 and other synthetic cannabinoids. The DEA had sort of an analog system set up where, when you make something illegal, innovative and resourceful chemists and scientists and breeders will come up with an alternative. And then the DEA will ban that and make that Schedule 1. And then they have to tweak those molecules a little bit. And every time you tweak it, it's turning into something else that nobody really has any knowledge of what the effects are on the human body. So it really creates a nasty catch-22 that could be completely solved by making cannabis legal.
It certainly could. And, while we sit here and think that this is rational thinking, okay, keep in mind that the plant actually grows a lot faster than bureaucracy moves, right? I mean, that's true, right? Research continues to be stalled because of its classification. They're doing everything, they being those in charge, let's just leave it at that, are doing everything they can to slow down the progress so that they get it right, or more importantly, actually have to learn about it more so they can learn more and actually get it right when they finally come out with this. I don't have as much confidence that the people that are sitting in these positions now with the government actually care that much about it. So I don't pass on it anyway. That being said, I look at my and I thank God it's Friday, and I thank God that we're only a few minutes away from 420. Okay, because that's when we take our break, Morgan, and it also allows me to pontificate a little bit about why I'm wearing this T-shirt. Now, true story, and then there's a convenient story about this. I happened to get this T-shirt in the mail today, out of the blue, from some friends involved with the Student Television Network, which is a great organization for high school students. They go every year to a convention and they show their best stuff. And obviously the theme of this year's convention that was virtual was Tell the Story. And doesn't that remind you of something, David? What else is about telling the story that's involved with the green rush? I'm setting you up for this, David.
You're the new Green Rush promotion on Tell the Story.
That's right.
Tell us, Jimmy.
And you could win with your story. This is a really cool cannabis storage device. And we're going to be solicit people's stories on text or via video. And you could win one of the storage units. Notice it's missing one. I know where that is. And this one here is the bottom of it, and it's all like great aluminum canisters, so it's very, very light and also very sturdy, smell proof and child proof, perhaps the most important thing too. As it turns out, Morgan, I'm going to hope you on just a minute. We actually got 2 stories submitted already this week. We announced it last Friday. We've got a couple of stories. We're going to urge people again to go to procannabismedia.com's website and enter your story. Tell us your story, because I can actually read it on the air, and you might win a prize, or you might win a T-shirt, or you actually might be invited on this show to tell your story and to talk more about cannabis. And I'm going to tell you 2 stories. Is that okay? Morgan, can you hang out for just a couple more minutes?
I can hang out for a couple minutes. I'm going to wait to share my story again until maybe the next time, but or submit it through the official channels.
Well, and by the way, even though you are affiliated with Pro Cannabis Media, you are not part of the family, because you're here to promote what you do. You're the communications director of the NTIA. All you're doing is doing your job. That being said, I'm not going to mention last name, but Cody has cerebral palsy. This was the first one that came in. I use cannabis to help with my palsy. I really, really believe cannabis can help people with different disabilities. Cannabis is a new miracle drug. It really helps out a lot, and we are still finding out what else it can do. I believe cannabis needs to be legalized in Congress. Again, I have no idea who this kid is, but it's an awesome story. One right after that, after attending UMass Amherst for 4 years, I saw everything that marijuana shouldn't be. I saw buds covered in mold in multiple dorm rooms and apartments. I saw people filling cartridges with stuff they barely knew. When cannabis became legal in Massachusetts, I started practicing my own growing with a legal 12-plant home grow. My fuel was that I wanted to create a product that resembles how the cannabis plant was intended to be, not grown for profit, but for quality meds, giving the plant its best possible chance of growing to its full potential. This practice helped me land a job at a facility in Rhode Island for medical marijuana cultivation. X number of years later, now pursuing a delivery-only license in Massachusetts under the Social Equity Program. I'm very confident that I will have a lifelong career with this plant, and my intention is not for profit, but for creating the most quality product available for people who need it. Man, doesn't that make you feel good for all the sweat equity you put into this cause down in Washington, right, Morgan?
Absolutely. Those are the stories I love hearing. I mean, that's what gets me up in the morning.
And we have the amazing is I got a lot of people telling their stories on our show that's in the weeds, and we're going to start putting them all together and sharing them on shows like the Green Rush Live, because this is one live show we do every week. So, Morgan, as always, thank you. The next time means that I believe is scheduled for the 3rd Friday in June, correct?
That's right.
Unless something breaks, and then you're always there. Frustrate that. Have a great weekend, Morgan Fox.